The front door didn't just close, it cracked against the frame so hard that the framed photo of us in Napa rattled off the wall and hit the floor face down. I was standing at the kitchen counter slicing an apple, and the knife stopped mid-motion. My fiancé, Marcus, never slammed doors. He was the kind of man who held them open for strangers, who set things down gently, who prided himself on being controlled. So when I saw his face, I knew something was wrong in a way I couldn't name yet. He didn't say hello. He walked straight past me and set his laptop on the dining table, open, facing me. I leaned forward, and my stomach dropped. It was an email thread. My name in the sender field. Sent from my work account to his personal one. Messages I had never written, words I would never say. Arrangements for a weekend in Charleston. A hotel room. His business partner's name in every other line. "That's not from me," I said. My voice came out quieter than I intended, almost a whisper. He laughed once, short and without warmth. "Your name is right there, Maya. I know what my name looks like." "Marcus, I didn't write those." He closed the laptop. "I had someone look at it, IT guy at the firm. Said it came from your device, your login, your IP. Then someone accessed my account without me knowing. That's the only explanation. Or the easy explanation is that you've been lying to me for 6 months." He pulled out a chair and sat down, not toward me but away from me, angled like he was already done with the conversation. "I've been going over everything. The late nights. The conference you went to in Atlanta. How you'd leave the room to take calls. Those were client calls, you knew that. I thought I knew a lot of things." I walked around the table, trying to get him to look at me. "Call me, right now, and ask me anything. Ask me where I was, every single one of those nights. I have receipts, Don't." He stood up. Not loud, not violent, but there was something in how he rose from the chair that made me step back. A coldness I had never seen pointed at me before. "I need you out of here tonight." I blinked. "Tonight? I'll have your boxes sent to wherever you want. But I can't be in this apartment with you right now. Marcus, we've been together for 4 years, we're getting married in 3 months. You're going to throw that away over an email you haven't even investigated properly?" I had it investigated. By one person. By someone at your firm who doesn't know me, who doesn't. His name is Reed. He picked up the laptop and walked toward the bedroom. And he's been a friend of mine for 11 years, so I trust him considerably more than I trust you right now. I stood there in our kitchen, the half-sliced apple browning on the cutting board, and understood that the conversation was over. He wasn't going to listen. Whatever Reed had told him had already settled into fact, and I was standing on the outside of it with no door to knock on. I packed one bag. I didn't cry. I don't know why. Maybe I was too shocked, or maybe some part of me knew that crying would feel like surrender, and I wasn't ready to surrender to something I hadn't done. I called my best friend, Danny, from the parking garage. She said, "Come over, right now, tonight, I'll make up the couch." I drove there on autopilot and sat on her couch until 2 in the morning while she made tea. I didn't drink and told me Marcus was an idiot in 7 different ways. I appreciated every one of them. But by the 3rd day, I knew I couldn't stay. Danny had a new baby and a husband who worked from home, and the apartment was small and strained, and I could hear her tiptoeing around me even when she thought I was asleep. I had also started feeling sick in the mornings. I told myself it was stress. I told myself a lot of things that week. It wasn't stress. I bought a test from the CVS on the corner, wearing sunglasses indoors like that was going to help anything. I sat on the edge of Danny's guest bathroom tub and waited. And then I waited a little longer because part of me thought if I kept looking, the second line might reconsider. It didn't. I pressed my back against the cool tile wall and stared at the ceiling and thought, of course. Of course this is happening right now. Of course. Telling Marcus was not an option I could seriously consider. He'd already decided what kind of person I was. Showing up pregnant would only confirm whatever story he'd constructed. And the idea of being with him again, of walking back into that apartment where he'd looked at me like I was a stranger, he'd made a terrible mistake trusting I couldn't do it. Not like this. Not while everything was still raw and uncertain, and I hadn't even figured out what I was going to do next. What I needed was somewhere quiet, somewhere away from the city, and the pitying looks and the questions I didn't know how to answer. I thought of my grandmother's house in Pelican Bay, North Carolina. She'd passed 3 years earlier and left the property to my mother, who had no intention of selling it but also no intention of driving 8 hours to maintain it. It had been sitting empty since the funeral. My mom kept the utilities on low and the property taxes paid and said someday every time someone brought it up. I called her from the parking lot of the CVS, still holding the test in my coat pocket like a grenade. "Mom, I need a break. Just a week or two. Can I use Grandma's house?" She paused. "Is everything okay with you and Marcus? We just need a little space. Before the wedding. I want to clear my head." She believed me, or chose to. She told me she'd overnight the keys and that the spare propane tank was in the shed and to check the water heater pilot before I assumed anything was broken. I said I would. I said I was fine. I said thank you. I drove to Pelican Bay the next morning with one duffel bag, a cooler of groceries, and an audiobook I never started because I spent most of the 8 hours just watching the highway unspool ahead of me and trying not to think too hard about any of it. The house appeared at the end of a gravel road that wound through a maritime shrub thicket, close enough to the water that on a still morning you could hear the waves from the kitchen. It was a low, weathered cottage, cedar-shingled, with a screened porch that ran the full length of the front and a garden that had gone properly wild since my grandmother stopped tending it. Sunflowers had reseeded themselves along the fence line. Wild rosemary had taken over one entire corner of the yard. The gate hung at an angle. I sat in my car for a full minute before I got out. Then I said, out loud, to nobody, "Okay, Grandma. I'm here." The first few days I did almost nothing. I slept more than I had in years. I drank decaf on the screened porch and watched pelicans skim the surface of the sound and tried to remember what it felt like to be a person who wasn't in crisis. The nausea came and went, mostly in the mornings, mostly manageable. I ate crackers and ginger ale and told myself I would figure everything out soon. Just not yet. Not today. On the 4th morning, I woke up to a knock at the door. It wasn't a tentative knock, it was the kind of knock that belongs to someone who is used to doors being answered, practical and unhurried. I pulled on a sweatshirt and went to the door still half asleep. Standing on the porch was a man in his early 30s, maybe, holding a cardboard box with a USPS label and a small clipboard. He had dark hair that needed cutting, a canvas jacket, and the kind of face that looked like it spent a lot of time outdoors without particularly thinking about it. "Morning," he said. "Package for Ruth Calloway?" She was my grandmother. She passed away a few years ago. He looked at the label, then back at me. "I'm sorry. Looks like an automatic reorder. She had a subscription for something." He held out the clipboard. "You can refuse it or I can note it for address update." "Is that Lou, please?" I signed and he handed me the box coffee, as it turned out, from a small batch roaster in Vermont. My grandmother's coffee, still arriving. He was already turning to go when something about the screened porch windows caught his eye. He stopped. "You have a cracked frame on that upper left corner," he said. "I can see it from here. With the salt air, that'll open up fast if you leave it." I looked. He was right. There was a thin crack running from the corner joint down about 4 inches. "I wouldn't know where to start with that," I said honestly. "I do." He said it without any particular pride. "I'm Caleb. I live about a quarter-mile up the road, the house with the blue kayak out front. I do most of the basic repair work out here for the seasonal properties. If you want, I can take a look this week." "I just got here," I said, which was not an answer. "I know, I've been delivering this route for 2 years, and that house has been empty most of it. So it probably needs more than just the window frame." He shifted the mailbag on his shoulder. "I'm not trying to sell you anything, just offering." I looked at him for a moment. He wasn't trying to charm me, he wasn't trying to insert himself, he was just standing on the porch like a person who meant what he said. "Okay," I said. "What does that actually mean, you do repair work? What did you do before?" He almost smiled. Marine contractor. Built and retrofitted dock systems up and down the Outer Banks for about 8 years. Then the company I worked for went under in a way that wasn't clean, and I ended up on the wrong end of a lawsuit that wasn't mine to own. So, he gestured at the mailbag. Life redirected me. That's a significant redirect. It was. He said it with no bitterness that I could detect. But I like it out here, it suits me. He came back 2 days later with a toolbox and spent an afternoon fixing the window frame, the back door that wouldn't latch, and a section of porch railing that had rotted through. He didn't talk constantly. He asked me what I wanted done, did it, and when he stopped for water, he'd sit on the porch steps and we'd talk about nothing in particular, the weather coming in from the coast, the best place in town to get fresh fish, whether the wild rosemary was savable. I didn't tell him about Marcus. I didn't tell him about the pregnancy. I was still keeping that close, like something fragile I hadn't decided what to do with yet. But then, about a week in, I was carrying a box of my grandmother's books from the back room to stack near the fireplace when I got dizzy, not dramatically, just a wave of sudden lightheadedness, and sat down hard on the floor. Caleb was in the kitchen fixing a pipe under the sink, and he came in when he heard me go down. "Hey," he said, crouching beside me, "what happened?" "Just stood up too fast," I said. Then I looked at his face, which was calm and direct, and not doing the thing where people's expressions go theatrical when they're alarmed, and I don't know why, but I just said, "I'm pregnant. First trimester. I get lightheaded sometimes." He looked at me for a moment. "Okay," he said. "Do you need water or do you need a minute?" "Both, maybe." He got the water. He didn't ask about the father. He didn't ask why I was alone. He just handed me the glass and sat down on the floor, across from me like we were two people having a normal conversation, which I hadn't had with anyone in what felt like a very long time. "You should be eating more consistently," he said. "Small meals throughout the day." My sister went through her first trimester living alone, and she said the dizziness got much worse when she skipped meals. Noted. And those stairs to the loft are steeper than they should be. I can put in a proper railing before I finish up here. Caleb. Yeah? Thank you. He shrugged, the way people do when they're not comfortable with gratitude but accept it anyway. "You're Ruth's granddaughter. That means something around here." She was good to a lot of people. I pressed my back against the wall and felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight for 2 weeks. That was the week I started to breathe again. I'd been in Pelican Bay for almost a month when I heard a car on the gravel road that didn't sound like Caleb's truck or Mrs. Patton's old Subaru or the fish delivery that came on Thursdays. I was at the kitchen table sketching out a design mock-up. I'd started taking small freelance projects to keep some income coming in when I heard it slow and stop outside. I went to the window and felt my stomach turn over. It was Serena's car. A white Lexus, salt-dusted from the drive, but still conspicuously expensive on a road full of sun-faded pickup trucks. Serena was my coworker at the design firm where Marcus and I had both worked before he bought into his own company. She was polished and strategic and had always been exactly as friendly to me as was professionally useful, which I'd told myself was just her style, her personality, nothing personal. She knocked the way she did everything, with precision. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. I opened the door. "Hey, Maya." She said it brightly, like we'd run into each other at a coffee shop. "Can we talk? How did you find me here?" She had the decency to pause. "Your mother mentioned it to someone in your circle. It made its way to me." "That's not reassuring." "I know." "Can I come in?" "It won't take long." I stepped back, not because I trusted her, but because I wanted to see what she'd come to say. Some part of me already knew. People like Serena don't drive 3 states to have comfortable conversations. She looked around the cottage the way people do when they're cataloging rather than appreciating. Then she sat down at the kitchen table, folded her hands, and said, "It was me." I stood very still. "The emails," she said. "I wrote them. I got into your account through the shared project drive. We had the same admin credentials from when we worked on the Hartfield project together, and you never changed yours." She looked at her hands. "I needed Marcus to stop trusting you." He was about to offer you the creative director role at the new firm. That was supposed to be mine. I'd been building toward that for 3 years. I heard myself say, "You destroyed my engagement for a job title." "I didn't think it would go that far," she said quickly. "I thought he'd confront you, you'd fight, maybe things would cool down between you. I didn't think he'd actually." She stopped. "Throw me out," I said. "The word is throw out." "He threw me out of our apartment with one bag." "I know." And she did actually look uncomfortable. I watched her and tried to figure out if it was real remorse or just the discomfort of being caught. "He found out. Someone in IT flagged the access log. Apparently the login used the shared credential but from an off-site IP address. He knows it wasn't you. And so you drove down here to tell me that because you suddenly have a conscience. He wants you back." She said it quickly. "He's too proud to come himself, but he wants to fix it and he wants me to smooth the way. To explain." I almost laughed. "So, this isn't actually about your conscience. He sent you." She didn't deny it. "He wants me to come back," I said slowly, "and he wants you to do the asking. Because that way, he doesn't have to admit that he looked at me for 4 years and still chose to believe a stranger's story over mine in about 48 hours. He made a mistake. He made a choice. Those are different." She was quiet. "You need to go," I said. "Maya, if you'd just—" The job I lost. The clients who dropped me when word got out that I'd betrayed Marcus. The 3 months I spent building toward a wedding I was genuinely excited about. I kept my voice even because I needed to. "I'm not coming back. I'm not smoothing anything over. And whatever you came here hoping for, the answer is no." She stood up. Something shifted in her expression, not quite a threat, but close. "You know he'll want to know about the pregnancy eventually." I felt my blood go cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm not stupid, Maya. You're 14 weeks, at least. I could see it when you stepped back from the door." She picked up her bag. "I'm just saying. He has a right to know. And if you don't tell him, someone else might. Get out of my house." She left. I stood at the door and watched her car back down the gravel road until it disappeared into the scrub, and then I sat down on the porch steps and put my face in my hands and stayed there. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the afternoon light to shift and the wind off the water to pick up and get cold. Long enough that I heard Caleb's truck turn in before I saw it. He pulled up, got out, saw my face, and just came and sat down on the steps beside me. Not touching. Not asking. Just there. I told him everything. Not in the careful, edited way I'd been handling the story in my own head, but all of it, the emails, the engagement ending, the pregnancy, the job, the month of pretending to my mother that I just needed space before the wedding. Serena at the table. What she said about telling Marcus. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, we sat in silence for a moment. "What do you want to do?" he said. "I don't want to go back, I know that." "Then don't. It's not that simple. I stopped. He might be the kind of person who fights for things he thinks belong to him, and I don't know if that includes a child he doesn't know about yet. Do you think he'd be good for your baby?" I thought about the way Marcus had looked at me across the dining table. The way he rose from the chair, the 48 hours it took him to end 4 years. "No," I said. "Honestly, no. Then you'll figure it out when you have to. But right now, tonight, you don't have to do anything except decide if you want to stay here or not." "I want to stay." "Okay." He stood up, brushed off his jeans, picked up the toolbox he'd left by the door that morning. "Then I'll finish the railing." I watched him go back to work and felt something shift in me. Not fixed, not solved, just steadied. 3 weeks later, Marcus came. I was pulling weeds along the garden fence when I heard tires on the gravel and looked up, and there he was, stepping out of a rental car in dark jeans and a jacket, squinting into the coastal light like someone adjusting from a different climate. He looked thinner. There were shadows under his eyes. He still stood the way he always stood, like a person who expected rooms to arrange themselves around him. "Maya," he said. I straightened up and brushed the dirt from my hands. How did you get this address? Serena told me. He walked toward the gate, stopped when I didn't move to open it. Can we please talk? You can talk from there. He let out a breath. I know what happened. I know it wasn't you. Serena told me the whole thing and I had IT confirm the access logs and… He rubbed the back of his neck. I was wrong. I should have let you explain. I should have trusted you first. I stood there and waited for the relief that I'd imagined would come with those words. It didn't come. What came instead was a kind of exhausted clarity. I appreciate that, I said. I genuinely do. Then come home. We can push the date back, take some time, go to counseling, whatever you need. Marcus. I know I handled it badly, but that doesn't mean everything's over. 4 years don't just… You looked me in the eyes, I said, and you chose not to believe me. Not after days of evidence. After one conversation with Reed, that was your first instinct when it mattered. I paused. That's not something counseling fixes. That's just who you are under pressure. He came closer to the fence. And then his eyes moved down and stopped, and I watched him understand. You're pregnant, he said quietly. Yes. Is it mine? You know it is. He was quiet for a long moment. Something moved through his expression, not tenderness, exactly. More like recalculation. Then I have a right to be involved. You can't just… I'm not keeping you from anything I don't have to keep you from, but I'm also not going back to build a life with someone who discarded me the moment someone handed him a reason to. My child deserves better than that example of how love works. You can't make that decision unilaterally. I can make it for right now. In this moment. And we'll work out the rest when there's something concrete to work out. He pushed the gate open and walked into the yard. I held my ground. Maya, I am not going to let you do this. I'm the father. You don't get to walk in here and use that as a threat. My voice was steady, which surprised me, not after what happened. If you want to be part of your child's life someday, that is a conversation we can have through proper channels and with proper documentation. But you do not get to stand in my grandmother's garden and tell me what I'm going to let you do. This is insane. He turned, ran a hand through his hair. Who put this in your head? The repairman Serena mentioned? Nobody put anything in my head. I lived in your apartment for 2 years and watched how you make decisions when you're upset, and I have a very clear picture now. He looked toward the cottage, then back at me. I'll get a lawyer. That's your right, I said. I'll be here. I didn't know if Caleb had heard the car, but when I looked toward the corner of the house, he was there, standing with a coil of rope in his hands, not saying anything, just present. Marcus saw him. Unbelievable, he said under his breath. Then louder, to Caleb. You think this is your business? I think she told you what she wants, Caleb said. That seems pretty clear. You have no idea what this situation actually is. I know enough, he said it simply. And she's done talking. Marcus looked between us, and I watched something in his face shift from anger to something smaller, the particular humiliation of a man who expected a different scene and didn't get it. He turned and walked back through the gate, got in the rental car, and left without looking back. I stood in the garden until the sound of the engine faded. Then I turned to Caleb and said, You didn't have to do that. I know, he said. But you were shaking. I looked down at my hands. He was right. Come inside, he said. I'll make something to eat. I followed him in through the back door and sat at the kitchen table while he moved around the small kitchen with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this before. Made meals in simple spaces for people who were wrung out, and I thought, this is a thing I did not know I needed. To be taken care of without theater. Without a price attached. The months that followed were not always easy. They were just real. I started teaching a community design workshop at the library 2 afternoons a week, just adult learners who wanted to understand color theory and spatial arrangement, who came with coffee and genuine curiosity and made me remember why I'd chosen this field in the first place. A woman named Gloria, who was 64 and redecorating her house after her divorce, told me at the end of our third session that I explained things in a way that made her feel capable. I held on to that for a long time. My daughter was born in late spring, at a small hospital 20 minutes inland, with Caleb in the waiting room and my mother on the phone and the windows open to let in the sound of rain. She came out red-faced and furious and entirely perfect. I named her June. After the month, after the light. She had my grandmother's forehead. She had her own eyes, dark and watchful, taking everything in from the first moment. She had nothing in her face that reminded me of anything painful. Caleb met her when she was 4 hours old. He stood at the door of the room with his cap in his hands and looked at her with an expression I'd never seen on him before, very still, very careful, like something that mattered too much to rush. "She's something else," he said quietly. "She really is," I agreed. In the weeks that followed, he built her a proper crib. Not from a kit, he drew it himself, measured everything twice, used cedar from a salvage yard so it would smell like something good. He mounted a row of small hooks at her window for hanging mobiles. He soundproofed the corner of the living room where I put her bassinet on the nights she slept downstairs. He never once made me feel that any of it was a performance. Marcus's lawyer sent a letter in July. We entered into a parenting plan that gave him limited contact pending further assessment, contingent on his participation in appropriate parenting classes and counseling. I had my own lawyer. It was not a warm process. But it was a documented one, and documentation was what protected June, and that was what mattered. Serena, as far as I know, did not get the creative director role. Someone told me later that the access log issue had been reported to HR before the whole story came out, and the firm's handling of it was complicated enough that she chose to move on. I found out through a mutual contact and felt nothing in particular about it, which was its own kind of answer. Autumn settled in along the coast, and the light changed the way it does out there, going gold and long and so horizontal it caught everything: the wild rosemary, the sunflowers that had finished and gone to seed, the paint on the cottage siding that Caleb and I had stripped and redone together over 3 weekends in September, while June slept in a bouncer on the porch, and Mrs. Patton next door kept checking on us with slices of pound cake. One evening, October, a Tuesday, nothing special about it, Caleb and I were sitting on the repaired porch with tea and the baby monitor between us and the sound of the water in the distance. June was asleep. The lights were on inside, and the porch light was off, and we were just sitting in that easy quiet that I'd been afraid I'd never find again. I looked at him. He was watching the yard, his hands around the mug, completely at ease the way he always was, unhurried, present, without needing anything from the moment. "I don't know exactly what this is," I said. He looked at me. "But I stopped running a while ago," I said. I just wanted to say it out loud. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached over and took my hand, not dramatically, just the same way he did everything deliberately, simply, like it was the most natural thing. "I know," he said. "I've been waiting for you to. We didn't rush it." That was the thing about him, he understood that some things needed to grow at their own pace, in their own season, without being pushed. He had rebuilt his own life from worse than nothing, and he knew what it meant to let something take hold slowly. By winter, he was there most evenings. Not because I needed someone to be. Because it was better with him there, and worse without him, and that felt like enough. June smiled for the first time on a Thursday morning while Caleb was drinking coffee at the kitchen table. I called him over and he leaned in close and made a ridiculous sound, and she did it again, wide and toothless and so entirely delighted with the world, and he laughed in a way I hadn't heard him laugh before, unguarded and genuine, and I thought, there. That is what I was looking for without knowing what it was called. I used to think love had to announce itself. That it came in through the front door with force, that you'd know it because it changed the pressure in the room. That anything quieter than that was just convenience, or comfort, or settling. I know better now. Love is someone who gets up to check the window latch because the wind picked up and he knows the frame is still a little soft on the left side. Love is a crib built from scratch and a cup of tea left on the counter before you wake up, and someone who asks what you need instead of telling you what you should want. Love is the same thing as staying. I still live in my grandmother's house. I repainted the shutters in January, a deep blue-green that she would have liked, I think. The rosemary is still winning the garden, and I've stopped fighting it. On Sunday mornings, the light comes through the kitchen window at a specific angle that makes everything look exactly like something worth keeping. June is growing fast. She reaches for things now, curious about everything, unafraid of anything. She'll be the kind of person who walks into rooms and takes stock before she speaks, who notices what others miss. She is going to be extraordinary, and she already knows the sound of Caleb's truck on the gravel and turns her head toward it before she can even see the window. I still hear from Marcus's lawyer occasionally. We're working through the process, I manage it and then I set it down. Some evenings, I sit on the porch after June is asleep, and I listen to the water and I think about the version of me who drove down that highway 8 months ago with one bag and a test in her pocket and no idea what was waiting. I want to tell her, keep going. Just keep going. Not because everything will be easy, but because the place where you belong already exists, you just haven't gotten there yet. You'll know it when you do. It'll look like a cracked window frame. It'll look like coffee left on the counter. It'll look like someone sitting on the steps beside you in the dark, not asking questions, just staying. It'll feel like coming home to a place you never knew you'd been missing.